Hello, my name is Sean Ennis, and welcome to Mixed and Mastered, the show that gives you an inside look into the minds responsible for creating the music for your favorite songs. Yes, the producers. And today I'm joined by a special guest. Can you share your name, where you're from, and how you got your start in music?
Yes, it's Monsta from St. Louis, Missouri, broadcasting live from Venice Beach, California. I got my start in music probably when I was 5 or 6 years old. I wrote my first song and produced my first song probably around 11 or 12 in St. Louis.
Oh wow! So definitely started early. And when you when you first started producing, what sort of equipment were you using?
School desk in our hands.
Okay.
Probably.
Okay.
And pens. Pens was
Gotcha.
pretty innovative. Whenever we got the pens for the hi-hats, it was game over.
Okay. And so when did you eventually start using like software and instruments to produce?
Let's see. So right around that same time, I was given an Elise. I think it was an Elise's ASRX drum machine, and right after that, a DR202 Roland drum machine, and scraped up some change to get a Tascam 4-track, and I forget what type of mic we were using, and we had that all wired up to a home stereo system. This was around 1999 or 98, and I think I was about 11. So that was our first medium for actually making the composition, the background music, or beat, whatever you want to look at it as. And we would dub that onto a cassette tape on channels 1 and 2, left and right, respectively, and play the beat off the beat machine while the tape was recording, and we would mute out the instruments to break down the beat. So that's how the beats and the recordings all started. And then shortly after that, I got a desktop computer, the PC, and I was one of the first people in my city to be running like a DAW, and the DAW was Cubase. I had Cubase and Sonar.
Wow, that is incredible to hear you talk about the extensive, complicated process of how you initially got started making music and making beats. Is just incredible to think where we are today with technology.
I mean, Fruity Loops came right after that. I got a disc that had zipped down all the programs that had all sorts of DAWs and stuff on it from this guy at Guitar Center in St. Louis, and I had Fruity Loops on it when it was still called Fruity Loops. I guess it was like FL1, and we kind of took Fruity Loops and Cubase and ran with it when everybody was still using tape. Everyone was still going to big studios using 2-inch tape on 48 tracks.
Now, when you first got started, I don't think there was any, YouTube tutorial videos. So how did you learn how to do all those things?
Okay, so in St. Louis we had a guy named Oliver Sane who did all the jazz and blues recordings, and then Chuck Berry and his group of guys did all the rock and roll stuff, and J.E. and Basement Beats, the producers of Nelly and the St. Lunatics, did a lot of the rap, and we all came from the same neighborhood, so around the same time in the late 90s, I would go bother them and the people at the music store, and there was a big studio called
And
from a person who did it in your neighborhood.
and how did you learn how to use the drum machine?
I learned, two people taught me how to use the drum machine. One guy, the first guy who taught me how to use an MTC before I had a drum machine was Benny DJ B Original Williams, who is now the DJ for the LA Rams, and he's still a friend of mine and mentor 20 years later. But he taught me how to use the drum machine, and then I had a friend whose dad was a DJ with a drum machine, and he kind of understood how to use it. His name is Jay Rilla, and he's a rapper from St. Louis. He sat down with me and kind of taught me how to record drum patterns and make the loops, and then we both kind of figured out together how to track them onto a DAW or onto tape. At this point, we were running the drum machine left-right output if we were doing a digital recording into channel 1 and 2 of the computer's interface and recording it the same way we were on tape. We recorded the whole beat. Instead of like now, today you would make the beat on Fruity Loops or whatever, export the WAV file and import the beat finished into Pro Tools or whatever, we would have to record and print the beat into the DAW, live.
Wow, that's such a extensive process compared to how we're able to create music today.
Yeah, it's definitely a little bit different. The main difference I notice is that there will be like, when you're in a place that doesn't have like the greatest power going to it and the best equipment, you're going to get like noise. And some people like that, but some people want it really clean. So like there was no way around. You'd always have a little bit of line noise or buzz or something, even if it was real light. In a song because of the power.
Now, when you first got started, you were using Cubase. Can you talk to me about that?
I'm sorry, you cut out there for a second. What did you say?
When you first got started producing, you were using a program called Cubase. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Okay, so Cubase was the first thing I got that you could record on a computer with, and it's been so long I can hardly even remember what exactly that DAW was like, but I remember it being a lot like Pro Tools. You would have like a series of tracks, and on a computer screen, and you would be able to record each track like Pro Tools and then play back and mix it off the computer, which was huge at the time because CDs were taking over. It was at the time when like CDs were completely had phased out tapes, and they were like in a battle with mini discs, which mini discs lost horribly. But so it was like we were the first people in the neighborhood who could pass out like burnt CDs because we had our music on a computer. Everybody else had tapes, so we were way ahead of the curve. I was able to get my music out to the neighborhood, to the city, super easy because I was burning my own CDs from Cubase.
And now talk to me about FL Studio. What do you like about using that program?
I liked it because the editing, and the unlimited amount of tracks. So in the beginning, with recording on a 4-track tape cassette, you had only 4 tracks. So we would record the beat on track 1 and 2, and we would record the leads and backups on 3 and 4, and then we would dub the stereo output of those 4 tracks into another 4-track tape machine onto tracks 1 and 2, so we could gain an extra 2 channels of recording. And with Cubase, there was an unlimited amount of tracks you could put on top of each other, so it took out hours and hours of dubbing to make a song. And I produced an album off of Fruity Loops and Cubase. functions with a mouse and a keyboard. Like maybe when one part was a little too loud, you could just select that part and lower it. Or if it was a little too soft, you could select that part and raise it. With now they call it clip gain. Back then they called it nodes. So you would use the nodes and make these little markers and isolate this area of sound and be able to turn it up or down. And when you're doing that on tape, you have to wait for it and physically ride the fader down or up during that portion of audio and redub the recording onto another tape. Every time you do that, you get a little more noise. So, you know, with Cubase, you didn't have that. And then, you know, from Cubase going into Pro Tools had, like, even more capability of rendering audio and manipulating audio post, which opened up a lot of doors for engineers and producers to be able to record people out of their house or in a makeshift studio in a garage or a shed or something and still be able to have an industry standard sound.
And what sort of effect do you think that has had in the music industry just overall? The rising accessibility and popularity of home recording studios?
Well, it's had a good effect for me and probably not the best effect for music. In some ways it's good, in some ways it's bad. So for me, the introduction of all the digital workstations and stuff like that, you know, gave a guy like me without a whole lot of money or access, you know, to huge studios. In St. Louis, there's not like a bunch of studios where you can go get a job or an internship. There's like 2 or 3 private studios that are those people's studios, and nobody else is going to go in them. So it gave me the ability to compete with multi-million-dollar companies with nothing. But it's also gave everyone else the ability to, you know, flood the internet and just media in general with a bunch of garbage for real. So, you know, so the good thing about it is that it gave me the ability to compete with little or nothing, but the bad thing about it is it gave millions of other people the ability too. So now there's this sea of people flooding everybody with so much garbage that nobody's got time to sift through that. So if somebody doesn't know you, you know, they're not going to sit down and listen to it because 9 times out of 10 it's just going to be some more trash that they're wasting their time clicking on. So, you know, you get lost in this sea of producers and this sea of hopefuls that aren't really dedicated to the craft. They just want to be a rapper or be a rock star and kind of just on a hope and a dream, you know, put some bullshit out off of their computer and to be famous or whatever else. So instead of only the people who really love this being the people out there doing it, there's a lot of people that are just in it for fame or fortunes, slapping some garbage together real quick, and then that kind of makes it a blanket over everybody who's not in the top tier of the industry are amongst this sea of hopefuls that you can quickly get disregarded, you know, as one of them if you're just working from home.
Is there a song that you've made that you're extremely proud of that you could talk about?
Every song I've made I'm proud of.
Is there one in particular that you could share?
In particular, let's see. I mean, I've had some really, really big songs. I've got over 100 million streams between the artists I'm working with. So I think, you know, things that people would want to hear me talk about are probably different than the things that I am particularly proud of. I've worked on some really Raucous Records and having the opportunity to be in the studio with guys like Talib Kweli and Monsta. And then, after that, growing up, coming back home, I was in the Army for a while, so that put a little bit of a halt on my career in music, and I came back home and went to Atlanta and was working with my friend Meezy, who was the engineer for 808 Mafia, and he had me in the studio with 808 Mafia in Atlanta, and in that experience, I was picked up by my friend Jay Rell. At the time, we didn't even hardly know each other, and worked with him, and he's behind Music Soul Child, Tyrese, Jamie Foxx, August Alsina, and a bunch of more people, and to get to work with him on a bunch of great R&B stuff in Atlanta, and I was fresh off of leaving Al Green's studio, Royal Studios in Memphis, where I learned a lot. That was an amazing experience, and then left to Los Angeles after Atlanta and got mentored by Jason Roberts, who was behind Cypress Hill and Machiavelli album by Tupac, and from there kind of blossomed and found my own way working with artists out here, and I've worked with a ton of big name artists out here, but I think when I think of that one specific thing that I'm super proud of, I'd have to say it was a Bo Dean song. I don't even know if it was ever released, but it was like the first song that I made that was perfect, and everyone who heard it wanted to know who put it together and how they could get a hold of me to put a song together with me, because it sounded so damn good, and that's when I started getting paid. So it was called All Night by Bo Dean, and he's an independent artist. If you guys haven't heard of him, you should definitely look him up. BO_DEAN, and his stuff's available on all platforms. And then I've made my own music too. I write, sing, rap, and all the other stuff. So I'll probably start releasing some of my own music. But more than anything, I think that just working with him and making that meaningful music that sounded so great, that I was able to start getting paid to record people and mix people, was one of the things I was really proud of in the past 5 years.
What makes you want to work with a particular musician?
What was his name?
No, what makes you want to work with a particular artist?
Okay, so that's kind of I don't know. I don't really have artists that I go after to work with. It kind of just happens. So like, I met him in the studio working with another artist, and that's usually just how it goes. Usually whatever artist I'm working with, just I meet organically. It's not like either of us were seeking each other out. A lot of the times it's just they end up sifting through producers and engineers till they find somebody they like, and we're just recording people until something sticks. And there hasn't been a lot of artists that I've been like, I got my eye on this guy, I'm gonna go track him down and record him. It doesn't really work like that. It kind of just happens on its own. But I mean, there have been artists. Recently I worked with Shy Glizzy. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Shy Glizzy. He's from DC.
Absolutely.
And okay, so you're familiar. And when I got in the studio, I was like, oh damn, I'm a Shy Glizzy fan. I like your music. So that was cool. And I've been in that situation with also recently Jeremiah. I was in the studio with him working, and that was pretty cool. I liked his music before I met him. guy from Chicago who was flying out here for a week to do an album with me named Jason Seitz. When I first got out of the Army, he lived down the hall from me in my apartment complex and saw me like dragging wires up there like 5 years ago. And came in to check me out, and he's like, he played for James Taylor and a bunch of other big classic rock guys from the 60s and 70s. And he introduced me to Frank Zappa, reintroduced me to James Taylor, and who's that guy who died in a plane crash, bro? You know what I'm talking about? He made all the American folk. I'm with my co-producer right now, Niall Durbin, as well. I like working with him. But Jason Seitz will be here, and we're doing a record together. We're doing a rock record. So, I mean, I do all different types of music and work with all different types of people, but I just met him in passing in my apartment hallway 5 years ago, you know, and, you know, finally now we're doing a project together, but he kind of showed me a lot of the game when it comes to working with studio musicians and bands and tracking live instrumentation. So now I'm composing a lot of songs that have choir sections, brass sections, string sections. I just called in a string section at Universal last week to do something for good music. That, I mean, I'll just go ahead and say it. I don't know if I'm supposed to talk about it or not, but it's probably going to end up being a Beyonce song. So, yeah, I mean, and Young Dolph's popped up at my studio. I helped develop Young Dolph years ago, and worked with him a lot. Chief Keef, Lil Durk and Herb. I remember when they were nobodies, getting beats from a friend of mine and coming up. So, I mean, I've worked with a ton of different types of people from a ton of different types of places, but it's all happened organically. I just worked my ass off, and then things happen.
What is the best way for producers to promote their work?
Make it good. Make it great, or more than exceptional. And, you know, be happy with it, be something, make everything something they're proud of, and play it to people or whatever, but first you just have to make the right shit. You know, you can't rely on going viral, or, I mean, these things do happen. Like Blueface went nuts, you know, with a pretty garbage song, and everyone was all hopped up about, you know, that phenomenon. That happens every once in a while, but more so than anything, you work your ass off. You work with other people who make good music that you're happy with, and you make good music that you're happy with, and people will hear it and like it. You know, and be a good person. Like, you hit me up to talk to me, and, you know, you have a dialogue with other people in music that are professional, and that's how you promote your music. You keep it real. All the fake shit I could go without. All this Instagram bullshit with people acting like they got a bunch of stuff they don't have, but really they're miserable, their music sucks, and, you know, they live with their parents or whatever, but they're on Instagram with a bunch of fake money, fake jewelry, fake clothes, being a whole fake person. You know, that's not how I think that you should promote your music. I think that you should make good music and let it promote itself, in short.
Can you share your social media links and also where people can go to hear or purchase your instrumentals?
Most definitely. So, my Instagram is at MIXED+MASTERED with no R's. MIXMASTAMONSTA. And anybody can check me out on Instagram and reach out to me on Instagram. On Facebook, I'm Jeffrey Monsta Wasser. And on my social media, there will be all the access to hear anything I've done and see all the people in Atlanta, Royal Studios, and Young Dolph in Memphis, a whole laundry list of people in St. Louis and Chicago, and every major label in Los Angeles. So the stuff's out there. You might even have listened to it, just turning the radio on, which is wild. I hardly ever listen to the radio or TV, but sometimes I'll have the radio on and something I made will come on and be wild. That's pretty fulfilling too.
Is there anything else you'd like to promote or share?
What's that?
Is there anything else you'd like to promote or share?
Well, I'd like to shout out my studio. I own my own studio and recording company, the Temple Recording Studios, and we have locations all over the country, and we also do on-site recording, to where if you're in a specific location that you like the sound of or the vibe of, we'll bring the equipment there and record you there. That's the Temple Recording Studios, and there's a link to all my studio stuff on my social media pages. And what else do I want to plug? Let me just plug everybody I talked about in this thing. If you heard their name, check them out and give me a stream.
All right, I would like to give a very big thank you to my guests for joining me today here on Mixed and Mastered. As always, write your comments below. Make sure you like, subscribe, and share this video.